Now, on this week's episode 54, it's super interesting. So, we actually got an email from Derik, maybe about May, about wanting to collab in some way. He was launching his business, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle with our move. And then I saw that he was interviewing Larry, and I was like, yeah, we need to collab. So, we did dual interviews. So I interview him and he interviews me. It's super cool. This episode is me interviewing him, and wow, what an interesting life this guy has led. It's so crazy to see the journey that people take to get where they are. He worked in the Arctic. He worked with the Indigenous people of Canada, a couple of different groups of people there. He moved to the West Coast. Now he's doing this whole like homecoming journey, coming back to the fresh water. He launched his business. It's all just super interesting. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this week's episode.
Awesome. It's good. I'm like, I wanted to send you a message. I wasn't sure if it was you once I had a person on and I looked up their name and it was the exact same name and it wasn't the person I was trying to interview, and then that was pretty awkward. They sent me a message. Oh, I don't think I know you. Like, refresh my memory, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, awkward for sure.
Definitely awkward. So I'm glad this is you. It's really you.
Yeah, this is me, and this is you.
This
Nice
is
to
us.
meet you
Yeah, nice to meet you.
electronically.
I know. So where are you located?
I just moved the week before last. I moved from Vancouver, BC to a place called Owen Sound in Ontario. It's not too far from Lake Huron, like Sauble Beach and Kincardine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
there's a good surf out that way.
Awesome. And are you from that area? Are you from BC? What's your story there?
No, I'm originally from a town called Leamington, Ontario. It's
Okay.
the most southern point of Canada. It's like about an hour drive to the border, like to go over to Detroit. So born and raised there on Lake Erie, and yeah, I lived there till I don't know, I was in my 20s, and then I started doing some adventures. I lived up in the Arctic in Nunavut for a while. Did some tree
That's
planting.
cool.
Yeah,
What
did
was
some
that like?
cold. Yeah. But hey, I lived right on the Arctic Ocean. Never saw any waves on it. Totally frozen the entire time.
That's super cool. What
It
made
was,
you go up there? I've never heard anybody going up that north.
yeah, well, in high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was older.
Right.
And yeah, and so I was working this job at night, delivering electronics. And I would go to school the next day and I was falling asleep during class. It was really bad my last year. And then I had this history teacher, and he started talking about Indigenous people and actually what happened, like when Canada and the US was colonized, like not the sugar coated, like happy settlers version, but smallpox and genocide and all these things. It was like, whoa, like it literally woke me up. Like I couldn't fall asleep in his class. I was totally just glued. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. All I knew is that I was a nice guy and I liked helping people. I couldn't get behind like consumerism or anything. So I went to school to be my first college diploma is called Traditional Aboriginal Healing Methods.
Wow.
Otherwise known as a Native community worker. So I decided I wanted to go up north and see what it was all about and help out however I could up there. And so I did, but 6 months was enough.
That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And it was pretty rad though. And the snow, like literally there was so much snow up there that I remember one time the snow was over our door that we had to jump out from the second story.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
wild.
I'm so fascinated by this. So when you get a degree in this traditional, say it again, sorry, so I don't mess it up. What was it?
Traditional Aboriginal healing methods.
Okay, can you expand on that, please? I've never heard anything about this.
Yeah, so I went to school on this reserve called Chippewa of the Thames, which is close to London, Ontario. And so I ended up living there with this lady. She was super nice. She became like my grandma kind of a thing. And I lived at her place on the reserve, which was really wild. Like, being a white guy, I wasn't sure how that was going to be received. And, there was hostility with certain people, but people knew where my heart was. And as they got to know me, it was totally cool. So, in fact, I remember one time the fire department, it was like one or two people, and there was this kind of mini forest fire that started right across the road from where I lived. And the firemen showed up, and it was only one dude like putting out a fire on the res. So he gave me a hose, and there I am like putting out a fire. That was pretty wild. Yeah. So. That was really interesting. Some of the highlights from that course were like going out into the wilderness and picking herbs and different plants for medicine and learning what they do. I remember one time it's like sassafras, bergamot, cedar, kind of forget what sage. And you put all this stuff together and you make this liquid. It literally tasted like ditch water, but I had this like sinus, like I had some sinus thing going on, totally gone. Like just incredible.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So yeah, so that was that education. Yeah. And it was pretty cool, going to school and like
so then from that sorry, you cut out there a little bit. One sec.
Oh no, I was just saying like it was pretty cool, like my grad ceremony, for example, was like, in a longhouse and people doing like a traditional dance and all just wow. I was just felt really honored to be welcome in that environment and witness that and be a part of it. And so when I went up to the Arctic, it was a different nation. Like then I'm living and working with Inuit people, which was sort of different but similar. But yeah, just really resilient people, very kind people. And yeah, I was actually surprised at what the relations looked like up there because oftentimes, the reserves in Ontario and I'm sure in the States, there's some resistance going on. But in the Arctic, it felt the integration was a lot different. So the relations were really good. At least to me, it seemed like that. But the social situation was not good. There was like a suicide every week that you wouldn't hear about and, like gas sniffing and pretty extreme stuff. So, yeah.
So relations, meaning like the relations between people on and off the reservations?
No, I'm talking about
Or
Canadians.
within the, like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, got
like
it.
settlers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you meant like inside of the reservation or like with people in the reservation. And because I know that's a interesting, and it depends on where you're at, situation here in the States. It's different. Basically, every single state that you go in has like Michigan has a pretty good rep. They have a pretty good thing going on in a lot of those reservations, and like there's not like this border town type of vibe that you get when you go maybe more out towards the Dakotas, where it's a little bit
Okay.
a little more gnarly. And here in Florida, it's I think the Seminole people, and they actually are extremely wealthy. They invested in Hard Rock Cafe casinos and own like all of
Wow.
them.
Yeah, the movies the US, like movies and things, really portray, every time you see native folks, they always like own casinos and these kind of things.
Well, there is I'm not exactly sure in what way it's a loophole, but that is pretty accurate. I wouldn't say for everybody, definitely not. But I would say if you're going through Michigan or if you're going through, I think the majority, unless you're in Detroit, there's a very good amount of casinos that are on native land or native reservations.
So you're no longer in Michigan, you're in Florida?
Yeah, so we moved to Florida about 2 months ago, but we
Wow,
were
right on.
in Michigan City, Indiana for 4 years. Yeah, about four
Wait a
years.
minute,
And
you
I
were
don't
in Michigan City, but that's in Indiana, not in
Indiana,
Michigan.
yeah,
Okay.
that's right. It's right on the border between Michigan and Indiana. I'm not exactly sure who decided to name that. Even
Yeah.
um, my bank today, I was changing my address and my bank was like, but you were in Michigan. And I was like, no, I was not in Michigan. I was in the city called Michigan City that's in the state of Indiana. It's
Yeah,
like, what is
that's
it?
a little
Kansas.
confusing.
I think there's a Kansas City, Missouri or something.
Okay. Is there an Indiana, Michigan?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I should Google it. I
Yeah.
should actually look that up. But no, I only
So
say
where
that
in
about
Florida are you?
So we are in the West Palm Beach area. So we're in Palm Beach County, but we're in like 15 minutes south of West Palm Beach in a small town or small city called Lake Worth Beach. It's super cool.
Wow.
It's like the last, I'd say, affordable area in Palm Beach County for sure, and probably in like southeastern Florida.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. It's like artsy. There's cool murals on a lot of the buildings downtown. It's very like it's not, I don't know if you've ever been to Miami, but Miami is very like flashy, like very fast paced, and then West Palm Beach is very like old money. Um so Lake Worth, it's kind of stuck in between the two of them. It's very random and very cool. So
Okay.
I love it. It's a
Nice.
perfect,
Yeah.
uh, very underrated surf. I love that.
Okay.
Everyone says there's no surf. There is, and it's really
Yeah.
good. For us, it's like a really good spot to be.
Perfect. That is a good place to be. When people think there isn't surf there, that's where you want to
There
be.
is. I know.
Yeah.
I
That's the
know.
whole Great Lakes scene, especially when I started surfing the Great Lakes. Like, it's just
Yeah.
so unheard of.
Yeah. So when did you start? When did you start surfing on the lakes?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in that town of Leamington. Um, and so it was, 1999 I started. But I'll elaborate on that a little bit, because I grew up, my dad left when I was young. And so I didn't really have that like male role model kind of for a while. And then I had a really great stepdad come in the picture. But I wasn't influenced by sports. Like most kids were playing hockey and baseball and all that kind of stuff. I was not into that. But my stepdad used to take me fishing a lot. So I really felt this connection with the water very early on. And I can remember my dad taking me to this beach when I was very young and very scrawny. I can't remember. I don't know what age I was, but I would have been under 100 pounds for sure, whatever that age is. So anyway, I remember being at the beach and my back was turned to the water. And it was a very steep face. And this wave came and just kind of grabbed me from behind. And I remember this very vividly. And it pulled me out pulled me into the water, and it actually then picked me up and slammed me on the beach face. And then I just felt all these other stones get lifted up and come and just, pounce on me. And I probably had every right to cry, but I was just like, whoa, like that is so cool. Like I was stoked and I didn't even know it. So from that point on, anytime there were, like there was a storm or something and there were waves, I'd usually just go out body surfing. Um, and then in high school, I remember Sublime came out with that album that Bradley Noel had the tattoo on his back. And that kind of like changed everything for me. That was like my big influence, like this SoCal music, and it just resonated with me. And it's still my favorite band, even with Rome. But when I heard that album, it's like I kind of felt like I knew I was going to be a surfer in some weird way. It's like I knew. And I remember on the back of the CD, there was this little image of a guy surfing on a board. I thought it was so cool. And I remember I was 17. I actually got that tattooed on my back before I had ever even rode a wave. It's like I just knew I was gonna be a surfer somehow. Meanwhile, I'm living on the Great Lakes. I didn't know about any of that stuff. So it was 1999. My buddy had a windsurfing board, and he's like, "Hey, let's go try this out." So I go out to the Seacliff Beach, it's called, and I'd heard about my grandma, the church she went to. I'd heard about the pastor of this church surfing. So when we went out trying this windsurfing board, like we were not having any success at all. And the guy was out there. His name was Mark, and he saw us, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you guys take that sail off and just try surfing, right?" So I just took the board out in the whitewash or whatever, and tried a couple times and didn't do it. And then when I got that first wave, like it's done, like game over.
Yeah.
I'm stoked, like, and it's basically been my life ever since. That was in '99, and he actually wasn't around much longer. And then I had another friend got into it. He wasn't around much longer. So I was basically flying solo. Anytime there were waves, just sort of figuring it out on my own. I didn't really have anybody teaching me or anything. But there were a couple of guys from Michigan that would come over every once in a while. I don't know, maybe you know these guys, I'm not sure. It was Emilio Moreno, Paul Kevlin, and Dean Williams. And Dean actually he was the shaper for Up North Surfboards. That was my very first board. So these guys were like, they were kind of like my idols, I guess you could say. Like when these Michigan guys came over, they were quite a bit older than me. I would have been like 17, 18. And yeah, so they hooked me up with a board, and those times when they came down, I was a part of something. I wasn't the kook that everyone's like, you can't surf the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, hello, here I am. Like,
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah.
But when those guys came over, I really felt like I was a part of something. And then there was a book that came out, I think in the early 2000s, called Surfing the Great Lakes by Peter Straz something. And at that time, his book said that there were about maybe 500 people, I think, surfing the Great Lakes. But this was before paddle boards or anything like that. I think with the addition of paddle boards now and wakeboards and everything else, like that number is way higher. I wouldn't know what the surfer, the prone surfers, I wouldn't know what those numbers are, but I know it's certainly bigger because I moved to Vancouver in 2008 because I wanted to be closer to the ocean to go surfing. And I should have looked at a map because it's like you still have to go to Vancouver Island and drive to the other side of it. And, I was a little bit younger. So yeah, I was living out there for the past 12 years. And in that time, I'm on the internet. I mean, back when I was started surfing, there was no Facebook. There was like the internet was kind of more in its infancy. Like we weren't using it like we use it today. At least I wasn't. Um, so just being in Vancouver, seeing this whole Great Lakes thing blow up, like especially in Toronto with guys like Larry and Antonio, whom you know. And so it really just got me like really invigorated and stoked again that I'm like, wow, there are more people like me out there. So yeah, I wanted to rekindle that relationship, get reconnected with that.
So your sole purpose for coming back was to be back on the Great Lakes, or was there other reasons as well?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I'd return. I guess the bigger story is my stepdad, who I was really close with. He passed away a few months ago, like in the very early COVID. Not from COVID. He actually drank himself to death, which is super sad, and why
That's
I'm a and why I'm an outreach worker.
understandable. I'm
Yeah,
sorry about that.
yeah, no problem. So that happened. My mom's had some issues with her knee for a long time, in and out of the hospital. My wife and I are at that point where if we're gonna have a family, like we frickin' better do it soon. So we just thought like Vancouver is awesome city. I would stay there forever if I could afford it. Like if you could actually get the house and settle down and everything, then we'd probably be there. But that's just not possible. And family's important, so we wanted to get back closer to them, and being back on the Great Lakes is a bonus. And I feel like a real sense of coming home. Like for the longest time, I felt like, what am I doing? Like I'm not in alignment with where I need to be, what I need to be doing. Meanwhile, I was, because no other opportunities were coming up. Like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I just might not have wanted that. But these days, things just keep happening that is pointing me, like major pointing me at doing this and coming here and getting something going. I'll tell you, this is interesting. This is kind of funny too. Um, I've started this kind of kind of small for now, online presence with Freshwater Surf Goods. And so I also do SUP lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the ride, I started the drive home in my blue Kia, and I had two Surf Tech, like 11-foot SUPs on the roof, because me and my brother-in-law were going to stop at Banff and all these different parks and go for a SUP ride. I wasn't even out of BC. It was like 3 hours into the trip. The tranny blows on my car. So my car's KO'd, and I still have to get across the country. So I'm at this mechanic, and like a lot of mechanics are kind of shifty people, right? But this guy, like something was really, he was just very kind, and I just knew this guy is in it to help people. Like his thing on his website said open 24 hours and 7 days a week. I'm like, wow, that's commitment, right? And when I talked to him on the phone, he's like, we're going to have you back on the road and on your journey. So I go to his shop, and in BC, you don't need, I don't know what it is over there, but in BC, you don't need to get your car safetied in order to put it on the road. As long as it's been in the province and it's been being driven, all you got to do is switch the ownership and get it insured, and you're on your way. In Ontario, that's not the case. It's like
a warrant of fitness or something to like make sure your car's fine.
Car's got to get safetied, blah blah blah, lots of
okay.
Yeah, but in BC,
Okay, yeah.
you can just buy a car, insure it, you're on the road. So this guy, he said, well, he's got this like Buick, and it looks like what my father-in-law drives, and I'm like, I don't want to fucking drive a Buick. Like, give me a break. Like, my Kia was cool. It had a roof rack, and it was extended back. It was like the Surfmobile, right? And then he's like, well, the other option, I got this old Crown Vic, but it's been sitting in my driveway, and it had a bunch of snow on it, and the roof is caving in on it. And I'm like, good God, like these options suck. I'm like, this blows. Like, I do not want to go to Ontario and start my new adventure in one of these cars. And he's like, I was like, do you have anything else? He's like, well, it's a little more money, but I got this van outside. You can go check out. So I go around back. This isn't like any van. This is a Ford F like E250, like big white cargo van.
Yes.
2009, like in great shape. And I bought it on the spot for $5,000. And that was just another one of those like, oh my God, this is, I actually felt like that was my stepdad kind of talking to me, like helping me out, right? Because now I'm in Ontario. I've wanted to start this surf business, do some sup lessons. Like now I got the van, like I got the boards, like I'm set up. Like things just keep rolling out like that. So I'm just want to stay tuned into this frequency and just, see what happens. Just go with it. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. Isn't it interesting? Like sometimes if you just say that you're going to do something, everything kind of just lines up for you to make that happen. Like
Yeah.
it really, I really believe that. And I've talked to so many people on the podcast, and some of the same people like that you've talked to, like when you hear about Larry, coming to Canada with like not the right jacket at all, and somehow it just all everything just works out. It's so interesting. Like I just feel like sometimes that humans or like us as people, we're meant to go on these journeys, and if you just make your journey, then everything else will kind of like figure it out.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, even saving money, like the last couple of years, we couldn't save a dime. We just always had a bill to pay or something to put money towards. Then COVID hits and I lose my job. And now I'm receiving what we call up here CERB, which stands for Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. It's like my income cut in half almost. But because of, not going out to the movies and doing this and that, I'm not spending any money. We saved like more money since COVID hit than ever before. And, saved enough to do the move, and not a whole lot extra, but like enough to do the move, enough to pay for that van when I had to. Like, it's just crazy. So yeah, you're right. It's just go with it. Just embrace it.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide to specifically start like right now you would be a clothing company, or is it like a brand, or what are you working on creating?
Yeah, so kind of going back to that early days of surfing, when I started surfing, I'm all stoked on Great Lakes surfing. What do I have to show for it? Like just my stories. And here I am walking around in Billabong and Quicksilver shirts, right? And those are cool, but they didn't capture the spirit of the Great Lakes surfer, right? So I always felt like that was a gap in the market. And then, so I always had this idea of I want to create really cool apparel for Great Lakes surfers, but there's only 5 of us, so what does it matter, right?
Right.
But then, like I said, I'm sitting here in Vancouver watching everything blow up on the internet and all the shops that have opened. And I know the presence in the US has always been more, but in Canada, like really seeing the advancement going on. So I just wanted to throw my hat into the game and have something to contribute. So I've started Freshwater Surf Goods. It's very new at this point, but I got a couple designs I'm pretty stoked on, and I hope other people are too. Stuff they can wear, and it's kind of gives that extra, not that we need to prove ourselves, but it's pretty cool to have something to represent. And so I want people to get that from Freshwater Surf Goods. And there's a lot of
cool.
and there's a lot of shops out there, and because it may take me a bit to get there, I thought that this could be the angle that rather than trying to be a shop and compete with other people, why not just start out trying to be a brand selling to those shops that already exist. So that's kind of where I'm starting.
That makes a lot of sense. And also, there's way less overhead than having a shop.
Yeah. And like I said, I do teach stand-up paddleboarding lessons and sup surfing actually. So I'm ready to go on that actually as soon as my boards get here. So yeah.
Are you did you have them shipped over or something? Or
They
you
are
ordered some?
they are in my Vancouver apartment right now with my wife. They'll be getting on a truck in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I've got two in my van right now. One which I was paddling down this river last week for the first time here in Owen Sound, just kind of like looking around, taking it all in, the trees, the Canada geese, the ducks, there were swans. I'm in La La Land. All of a sudden, I just like I hit this snag and I go forward. I almost fall off my board. I look down. I pretty much ran into an old fallen tree, and this tree like stopped me dead in my tracks. So anyway, when I pulled it out later, huge crack in it. So I actually have it in my van now. I'm taking it to Larry on Friday.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
somebody get that board to Larry.
Yeah, it needs repair. I'm in bad shape right now. I was in Tofino a couple of weeks ago. My board snapped in half at
But
Long Beach.
That's kind of a rite of passage, though, I think.
Yeah, but I got 3 surfboards and 2 of them are broken. Like those odds aren't really that great right now. So my new board that I actually shaped myself, it's like an 8'2". It's in Vancouver. Never been ridden, waiting for the lakes, so I can't wait.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask where you got your blank from. Like, did you
Oh.
shape an old board or you ordered a blank?
No, in Vancouver, there's this place called, shout out to my friend Alex Rosen. He has a place called Hidden Village Surfcraft and Design. It used to be a studio called Shaper, and they would teach how to shape surfboards, how to glass, how to do all that stuff. But they went away. So he's got a smaller operation. But basically, you go see him, and he teaches you how to shape the boards. So, and it's very affordable. I mean, the whole thing altogether, I think I paid around 1,100 Canadian for the board. Which,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like honestly, that's really cheap. Like probably most longboards cost more than that actually. So yeah, and I got to shape it myself, put my own design on it, pick the color, everything. So yeah, and it's based off the mini Malibu design. I was making it originally for my wife. Now I really am going to be riding it as well. But it's called a mini Malibu, but I'm calling it the mini Michigan since I'm bringing it to the Great Lakes. Yeah. And him and I actually are working on a few board designs that we will be selling together through Freshwater Surf Goods.
Oh, that's awesome.
Boards with the lakes in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart. That's really smart. I know that they had, where I used to work at Third Coast Surf Shop, they have a collab with Bing that's like the custom lakes boards, and they do super well. I just think that once you get to a certain level in any surfing, but especially in Great Lakes surfing, you need to have like a specific, you kind of know what you're looking for, and what you're looking for on the lake is different than what you're looking for on the ocean, as you know. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at this place here in Canada called Sauble Beach. It's this really beautiful, epic place. Kind of looks like a mini California, like burgers and milkshakes and people on the beach. It's really rad. But anyway, I was out there and there were these little waves. And like I've been away from the Great Lakes for 12 years, right? So my perspective, you have to understand, is tainted. Like I'm in ocean mode now, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at these waves, and I'm like all those cynics from back in the day. I'm looking at them like, those are pretty small. You can't surf those. So I go out in my paddleboard. I just wanted to get some exercise, and my board is by no means a sup surf board. It's not meant for the surf, but I was riding these little fun waves in no problem, and there was this sensation that came over me, this like, yeah, like welcome back, like you're home, you're where you belong. And it's like I could feel the difference in the waves. Like Great Lakes waves are usually harder, but in a sense, it felt easier to me for some reason. It was like just a return to self. It was pretty awesome.
That's so cool. That's really cool. It's cool to hear somebody that just goes for it, and like you're getting what's due in a way, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Like I said, just for so long, I felt like I was going against the grain. I'm like, when is something going to happen? When is my moment? Like, I remember hearing the story about David Hasselhoff. I think he was like on an airplane or something, and they just grabbed him and made him a movie star. Like, then he was the Knight Rider, right? And not that I
Right.
want to be a movie star, but I kept thinking, like, when am I going to be discovered? When is that thing going to happen? I kept waiting for something else to happen to me. Whereas these days, like, I've really learned, like, no, you got to go out and get it. But you don't even
Yeah.
necessarily need to purposely act or chase, but you need to be open and aware, I think. And then things just start coming into your field.
I think so too. I'm gonna find this picture and I'm gonna send it to you. But it was at a backpackers. It was like they put cool like nice sayings in chalk on the front, and it was something like the tourist is bored because he keeps waiting for something to happen to him.
Mm.
The traveler is excited because he seeks adventure every country or every place that he goes or something like that.
Yeah,
So it is kind of like that. If nothing ever happens to you, then nothing will ever happen to you. But if
yeah,
you go and seek adventure, then magically you find that a lot of interesting things will happen to you, but it's only because you decided to go for
yeah,
said adventure, I guess.
yeah. Things really shifted for me a couple of years ago. I'd had some injuries and things, and they were kind of accumulating, and I had gained some weight, and I was getting bogged down by this sciatic pain I was having and whatnot. And I ended up being off work for a little bit, and I went to the naturopath, and she said to me, she's like, you should try doing yoga. And I'm like, yoga? Like, my wife's been doing yoga all these years. I know nothing about yoga. My vision of yoga is like, girls in stretchy pants and, that kind of thing. It's like not really resonating with me. And she said, what would you prefer, a science yoga or a spiritual yoga? And I'm thinking, well, I don't know a damn thing about science. Like, science is not my gig, but I'm fascinated by spirituality and, native teachings and I'm very open to all that kind of stuff. So I went into this place in Vancouver called the Dharma Temple, and I was blown away. Like, I thought I was going into this, move your arm this way and do that. Sure, it had a lot of that, but it was the richness of the teachings. It was like, wow. And like, unlike other, religions and things that have been presented to me, no one had to convince me of these teachings. Like, they just made sense. It was like, yeah, what you're saying, I can actually feel that. No one needs to tell me that. I can feel that what you're saying is right. And one of the lessons that was the most powerful for me and I think has gotten me, here now, is giving yourself the authority. And that's not something I was doing before. I was always kind of like bashful or let the other person go first, No, you have to give yourself the authority to do what you want to do. And, like yourself, this whole podcast thing, I started the Permastoked podcast. That's a little nerve-wracking at first. Like, I've been kind of hiding in the shadows for a while, and here I am. I'm about to put myself out there to people, reveal my secrets, and share my vulnerabilities. Yeah, like that was something big. So I'm like, no, just give yourself the authority to do the podcast. No one can tell you you can't do it. And sure enough, I'm 10 episodes in and it's rocking. It's going awesome.
It's so interesting with podcasting too because it ends up being so much about like listening as well that
Hmm.
you think that it's I find that to be super interesting. This is, I'm going into probably like 60 episodes now, and um it's super interesting because it's so not about you. Like it actually becomes that because
Hmm.
I was kind of that way in the beginning. I was like, um I was struggling with like, do I make it about me? How do I kind of like what you were saying, like you recorded like an episode explaining yourself and all of these things. And I guess I kind of realized that I didn't need that preface
Mm.
of like who's giving these interviews, like
Yeah.
it just was exactly the interview is the interview, and every podcast is different too, like
Hmm.
that like we're podcasting on a similar wavelength, but it's not the same thing, and that's
Yeah.
what's awesome is
Yeah.
that um I know so many different surf podcasts and how many different um people start different surf podcasts, and I listen to so many different podcasts as well, so it's
Yeah.
very interesting. But
Yeah.
you have to, like, you do have to put yourself out there. You have to ask people. You have to, it's humbling, I think.
Yeah. Well, to throw in a caveat there, when I was in high school, before I became that traditional Aboriginal healer, I was thinking, okay, I kind of had this interest in radio, and so I got
Hmm.
a job at the local radio station I was broadcasting the Toronto Blue Jay games and Maple Leaf games, and I'd put the commercials in there. And then in the summer, they were advertising for their summer patroller position, which is the dudes who drive around in the cool car and go to all the events and give away free swag and go on air and say stuff, right? So I got that job. Was really stoked about it. Did a couple on air kind of things. And then I did some at the beach as well. And my boss came up to me. She's like, Derik, we don't want to have you on the radio anymore. Your voice just isn't working for what we want.
Oh,
But anytime you're at the beach, we want you broadcasting from the beach because you're like the total surfer dude kind of thing.
oh yeah,
So I was like, okay, so just that's cool, right? I'll just lean more into that.
yeah.
So
That
yeah,
that's that's so funny.
yeah. So now that I'm doing this, it just feels sort of full circle in a way. And if I were to compare myself to other podcasts, it's like, oh yeah, maybe I don't think I'm as good or whatever. But honestly, you and I, we do have kind of some similar shows, and we've had some repeat guests. But like you said, like our vibes are different. We're different people, so we bring different things, and it's a whole world of it out there. And lucky for me too, I'm able to really tap into this Canadian scene because no one is podcast interviewing like the pro surfers from Tofino or Halifax and stuff. So I'm also really lucky to sort of have given myself the authority to just start reaching out to pro surfers like, hey, I'm Derik Hyatt, want to do my podcast. Yeah, and it's been going great so far. People are so hospitable and fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's so cool. I just love doing it.
yeah, yeah. It's great talking to people. Like, really, I just feel like I've made so many new friends and so many new people to go surfing with and learn from. And yeah.
Yeah, totally. Me as well. And I just I think it's cool that you have like tethered it to your brand. I think
Mm,
that that's really smart because it starts as the podcast, or people can either find it like either way. So they can
Yeah.
either find you from Freshwater Surf Goods, and then you go to your website, which I really like. It's a very well designed website. And
Thank
then
you.
you can see, oh, there's a podcast, or you can do, like you might listen to somebody on the podcast and say, oh, what's this Freshwater Surf Goods? And then you go
Yeah.
there. So I like that different like channels. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
See, and I've heard your take on, not having the advertising and stuff like that, and I totally get that, respect that too. For me, I decided, okay, I want to sell stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course I want to make money, but like more than making money, this is my passion. I just want to be absorbed in this culture. And I don't like at the end of my life when people remember me, like what is my legacy? I want it to be in things that are meaningful. So the work I do as a social service worker, that's meaningful. But then also surfing has done so much for me that I want to contribute to that and make it known to other people. And so I was thinking with the brand, it's like I'm asking people to get something from me, but what do I have to give them? So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do the podcast as a way to give something without any expectations or asking for anything back. Sure, I'd love people to go to the freshwatersurfgoods.com, buy a t-shirt, but if not, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes people interested in whatever you're doing too, I think, is that um I don't know, I think there's this kind of interesting consumerism thing that's happening where people don't want to just buy whatever. It
Yeah.
becomes more of a like they want some sort of connection to whatever is being sold to them, which I think is really good. And yeah, you can just really see that with what you're doing. It's very cool, and it's you just love to see it, especially from the lakes. I mean,
Mm,
I think everybody that has surfed the Great Lakes or is involved in that community knows, and we're like proud of our own in
yeah.
this way that's like
Yeah.
just really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I have, they probably wouldn't think of themselves this way, but guys like Vince Durr and, Larry and Lee Williams, like these are guys that I was watching as a late teenager on all these movies, Step in the Liquid, Unsalted. Now I'm doing podcasts with them. Like I'm getting to know these guys. So it's so cool. Like I'm getting to know my elders, if you will. But really, these are guys that I've looked up to, and they don't even know it because I've never met them in person, some of them.
Right.
But yeah. And also, the other kind of sneaky thing I did with the podcast was I didn't I didn't have a clue. I was not on Instagram. My wife talks about Instagram. I didn't have a clue about Instagram. I'm always like a decade behind. Like my wife is like, you're so 90s, like everything's always 90s, right? So I'm always a bit behind. And so Instagram was not my thing. But then I thought, okay, if I get the podcast going and I start asking people for pictures, right? Now I'm getting this plethora of amazing photos from people. And it's not that my Instagram is really, I don't know how directly that is impacting sales, but regardless, it's getting followers and it looks damn awesome because
Yeah.
I'm getting super cool photos from people. So I actually just love it from the aesthetic point of view too.
Yeah, it's really cool because once it grows like all at once. I feel like it'll grow a little in the beginning and then all at once. Ours was
Okay.
exactly the same way. It's like you start, I don't know how many followers you have, but I feel like for us, we got so excited after each, like first it was like 50, then it's like,
Mm,
oh, we have 100, and now we
yeah.
have like 250, and then it's just that incremental growth, and it's all organic, that it's not like bots or all these other,
Mm,
you know, some people with
yeah.
thousands of followers, like, oh, this is actually people, and you can look at their profile and you can say like, oh, I know that these are the people that think that what I'm doing is important, and that is super cool.
And the interaction, like all of a sudden to be having this interaction and people asking me about boards and spots and things. It's just like, it's such an honor, like to have started something over 20 years ago that just seemed so ridiculous to everybody else, to now like see the payoff that, I'm actually part of something bigger, and I've actually been doing it for a little while, like I can't say that for a lot of things, I'm not really the expert on a lot of stuff. So this is cool that I have been a part of this sort of family for so long, and it's great to have seen it to grow. And now that I'm here, I'm totally stoked just to get to know everybody. Honestly, I'm so pumped.
So I've got 3 last questions for you. So the first one is, what is your biggest oh shit moment while surfing?
Biggest oh shit moment. In the very, very early days on Lake Erie, like I said, I didn't have anyone give me a surf lesson. So even something as simple as doing the starfish when you fall off, or wrapping your head when you come up. So I got dinged in the head a few times off my first board, pretty bad. That was a real wake up call. But the scariest thing, I think, was one time I was at Indian Beach, which is part of Cannon Beach in Oregon. I love that spot. And I got caught and stuck out in the rip curl for a while. That was pretty frightening. Like, no matter how hard I paddled, I just couldn't get in. And there were other people, that was quite a while ago, but there were other people out there, and I was kind of waving and stuff, because the universal symbol for help on the water is waving your hands.
Right.
So I don't know if it's not that in the Americas or something, because no one was coming to my aid. But regardless, I got out. But that was just another, actually, I think because that was so early in my ocean surfing, coming from the lakes, that was my sort of wake-up call that, hey, there's a whole nother power at work here with Mother Ocean. Like, she's got her own agenda. She's got different things than the lake does. Not that the lake isn't powerful. I was a commercial fisherman for a while on Lake Erie, and I saw some of the biggest waves I've ever seen out there. So
yeah, there's an interesting thing that happens, the transition between lake and ocean, because you're right. It's still, the power level is similar. It's just different. It's a different thing. I totally, yeah. And there's nothing like getting caught in a rip, because there's nothing you can do.
yeah.
That's the toughest thing, I think. Like with a bad wipeout, you can kind of do a self-rescue, or you can try and pull yourself out of it. But man, you get caught in a rip, it's like, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question for you is, what is the weirdest wave that you've ever surfed?
Yeah, I've heard you ask other guests this, so I kind of was thinking about this a little bit. And to be honest with you, I think really the weirdest wave I ever surfed was the first wave I ever surfed. It was back home in Leamington at Seacliff Beach. And I say that because we were surfing right next to this pier, or the Leamington dock, and literally it was just nasty water. It was like brown water, E. coli every summer. Like, we had no freaking business being in there. Like, I'm surprised I don't have 3 eyes or an extra leg or something. Like, it was pretty nasty, especially now that I'm up here and I go out in this clear blue water. You can see, the seaweed on the ground, everything. So yeah, Lake Erie, where I was born and raised, was pretty nasty, pretty dirty. And that actually really upsets me, that they don't take better care of it there.
I feel like they might have, it could be changing, but I know that there's been some major cleanup efforts that, like, recently. I'm not going to speak to how clean it is at this very moment. I would have to ask some people there, but I do know that it's better.
Yeah.
So that I can say that. But I don't know how clean it is, but I have heard of cleanup efforts going on and some serious like involvement with like removing certain chemicals and doing things. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Super scientific sounding, but like I know
Yeah.
that they're trying to do something different with Lake Erie. I know that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, we have all these movements happening right now, which are great. But yeah, maybe we need another one. Maybe we need like Great Lakes Matter, like
yeah,
stop
yeah.
dumping shit in them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've talked about this before, but I know that the Surfrider Foundation in Chicago successfully sued the local steel mill when I believe it was hexa. I'm not going to say the chemical, but it was the same chemical was in the Aaron Brockovich movie. So
Mhm.
it's the same uh,
You say
hexa.
that like I would know
Chromium
what that is.
6. Well, I know that people know that movie
Okay.
more than they would know whatever hexavalent chromium 6 is what it's called.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that's why I threw that out there. Not, but
Okay.
that was contaminated and a bunch of surfers got sick,
Oh no.
and they did successfully win a lawsuit, which was a landmark case. So I know that Surfrider Chicago, I don't know if you guys have a local Surfrider chapter.
It's one of the things I'm curious about. We do in BC, but I have not seen a Canadian version of that. Although there are other organizations, Alliance for the Great Lakes and a few others now that I'm here, I need to do my research and get connected with them. But yeah,
Yeah, that would be something interesting to look into for me because I know that is a really powerful and great organization. They've done
yeah,
the Chicago branch has definitely done a lot. That's for sure. Um,
yeah.
but my last question for you is, what is next for you?
What is next for me? Couple things. Um, like I said, things are just kind of happening. And even as much as I was telling you, I'm not sure I'm ready to open up a surf shop. I don't know. Life might be telling me otherwise. Some things have presented themselves to me in a very appealing place. I'm not going to list names right now in case it doesn't work out, but I could be coming to a lake near you sooner than I think in shop form. If not, definitely look for my van. I'm going to be out there providing sup surf lessons, hopefully out of Lake Huron as early as either later this summer or next summer. Permastoked is going to places that I didn't even imagine at first. I have one of my biggest guests ever coming up that I'm super stoked about. Literally, my favorite artist in the entire world, Drew Brophy, he like changed surfboard designs forever. Like he's the guy who brought color and images to boards. He is actually going to be a guest on my podcast. Him and his
That's
wife agreed to
awesome.
do it. So I'm super stoked on that. And I don't want to say the name either, but randomly I got a really weird connection came through to me. There could be a really huge guest coming up on the show that'll would just be, I think, incredible to be even mentioning Great Lakes surfing to this person and getting their take on it. So we'll see what happens there. But otherwise, freshwatersurfgoods.com. Check it out and let us know your feedback. It's quite it's a little more expensive and whatnot than I realized to be hiring artists and creating these designs. So it's going a little slower than I want. But, I have some cool design ideas I'd really like to get out there. There's another company, I think do you know the one I'm thinking about? Great Lakes Proud. That's pretty cool. I like that brand. I like he's got the lakes with the different designs. So I have some similar things in mind to that, but also some different ideas I think people are really going to like. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad we got to do the good old switcheroo podcast style.
Yeah, it's really cool being on the other end of this. And I actually feel a lot more comfortable answering your questions than thinking up my own, actually, for some reason. Like the pressure's off me, I guess.
And that was episode 54. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I will leave all the information about Derik and his cool company in the description box below. And of course, we will see you next Monday with not only a new audio episode, but also a new video episode. Hope you really enjoy it and have a wonderful week. And that was episode 54. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I will leave all the information about Derik and his cool company in the description box below. And of course, we will see you next Monday with not only a new audio episode, but also a new video episode. Hope you really enjoy it and have a wonderful week.